Hey guys, welcome back to AJ Tech. So in today's video, I'm going to continue teaching y'all about Java. And today, I'm going to start with the strings variables. So the string variable can be made by doing string, and then you can name it. I'm going to name it str equals, and then you can have between two quotation marks, let's say hello. And let's print this out using the command that we learned last time. System.out.println, and then we can do str and so we get hello. Alright, so the thing is the string is an object type, not a primitive. So it has methods. So let's say we have a string, let's call it string1, str1, and that's equal to bye. And we wanted to see if str is equal to str1. We can't do you cannot do str equal str1. You can't do that because you can only do that to primitives. And so there's a method built into strings, and a method is where you can do like dot something. So you can do the dot equals method, and then of the other string. So you're doing str dot equals and then whatever other string you want to compare it to, and this will return a true or a false. So let's put this into the println. Let's see. So str dot equals str1. So we know that it doesn't, and let's see what it prints. And it says false. Let's say we make this into hello. Then it will print true because it's comparing the strings, that like the actual strings that each one of these has in it. So this is the most frequently used string method. There's also other methods that strings can use, like let's say so there is the dot length, and this is very important because the dot length method tells you how many characters a string has. So if we count this, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So if we do string 1 dot length, we should get 5, which we do. So now we have the dot equals method. Define two strings. And we have the dot length method. And another method I want to talk about is the char at method. And it's defined the character at a certain index. So when I say a character at a certain index, so each one of these characters, so if we look at this, hello, in Java, each one of these is like a character by itself, and you can see that it's not like this is the first character. In Java, the first element is the 0 index. So this would be the 0 index, 1 index, 2 index, 3 index, 4 index. So the maximum index is always 1 minus the length, of the string. So we can, for example, let's do string 1 character at. Let's say we wanted you wanted to print out this O. So we know this is 0, this is 1, 2, 3, 4, the last, so it would be the fourth index of characters. And we get O right here. Okay, and another important method, the last method I want to go over for today's video for strings, is the substring method. And it finds the substring between two integer values. But beginning at the first one and ending at the last one non-inclusive. So it would be from the index of, let's say we had x and y. It would include x greater than or equal to, and then substring, and then less than y. So it would be everything up to y. So let's do an example of this. So substring, let's say we want to print out LO. So we know, like, out of the hello, we want the ELLO. So we would do E, we would start at the E, which is an index of 1, because this is 0, this is 1. And then we would end at 5, because it's not on here. So see, it doesn't include the second one, but it's the first index is included, but it's up to the fifth, like up to the second index that it takes. So let's say you wanted to get ELL, you would do 1 to 4. So the fourth index is actually this one right here. This is 0, 1, 2, 3, and then this is the fourth index. So up to the fourth one, so we would just get this part. If we do 1 to 4, we would see now, and we get ELL. And this is important because sometimes, let's say we want to just get a part of the string, you don't want the whole string. You need to understand how the substring method works. Okay, so after going all these methods, the next thing I want to go over are arrays. So an array is something that, let's initialize one for now. So it can be primitive, or it can be like object. So let's say we want an array of ints. We can do int, open bracket, close bracket, and let's call it array. And then we do equals new new int, and then you put the size in here. Let's say we have to put 10, for example. The important thing about arrays is that you have to put the size when you make them. So you can't, they're not like, the size cannot be changed afterwards. So this is one way of initializing an array. Oh. And the second way is you can do this. So you can do array equals, and then you can just put the array you want in, like, between these two brackets. So let's say you want 2, 3, if you already know the values. And then this is the second way of initializing an array. And the cool thing about arrays is that they can be strings, they can be ints, they can be booleans, they can be like almost any data type. And the way that you can access stuff in an array, so let's say right now we have ints. So when an int array has like when you have not decided the values, like right here we decided the index 0 is 1, index 1 is 2, index 2 is 3, then and it's a size of 3 because it's only 3, you've picked 3, then they have value, like each cell has a value. But in this case where we just said it's a size of 10, it's empty. So for ints, for example, the default value for empty is zeros, and we can see this by doing accessing the array value at, let's say, index 0. So index 0, like we said, it's kind of like the string. It is like the string. Index 0 is like the first element, and then the last element is the length minus 1. And let's print this out and see. See what we get, and we should get a 0. And yes. So even if we put at index 1, so the second element is equal to 0, because we never specified. So let me write this here. And this is different for objects. So let's say we made another array. Let's say we made a string array. It's the same way, you like we can call it string r, and then new string, and let's make it 10, the size of 10. So this would be different because let's say we do string array, and we print out the first item in the array. The default value for a string or any object type of an empty array is null, and you can see it right here, it's null. So default value and this is important to know because that's an easy way of telling whether like it's empty or not, whether your array is empty or not. But for the int, it's a little bit more difficult because like you can have a 0 value, but for the string array it's easier because if it's null, then you know there's no string in there at all. And for any other object type. So the next thing I want to get to is showing the idea that you can like fill the array. So like let's say we want to, with our int array, we want the first element, which would be index 0. So we do array, and then we put the brackets, and then we say at 0. So the first element in the array, and we want to make it equal to 10. Okay. So then we can print the first element, and it should be equal to 10. Oh, I mistyped it. All right. And it is. And this is the same for anything, but the other ones are still not affected because the other elements in the array are not affected. So let's say element 1, because we only changed the first element. Not this is the second element since index 1 is the second element, and it should still be 0 because we never changed it. So one way that arrays can be like looked through, or you can go through an array, is called a for loop. So for loops have this format. So how you do a for loop is you have an int, you initialize an integer, which is the index. So int I, it's usually the standard way of doing it is calling it I, and you set it equal to 0. So you're initializing an integer, which is the index, and you're setting it equal to 0. And then the second part of the for loop is when does it run? And you're saying while I is less than something, or while I is greater than. It's just a statement that says what has to be true for this for loop to keep going. And I want to show y'all the example for the array, and we can do I is less than array dot length. And then our final thing is how much do you want to increment, or how do you want to change I at the end of each like cycle of the loop. So usually people do I equals I plus 1. And another way to write that, let me put this in a note, I equals plus 1 also equals I plus plus. So if you do I plus plus, it's the same thing as writing I equals I plus 1. So you're just adding 1 to I at the end of each like cycle of the loop. So now if let's say we want to print every value of array 1, okay, we would put a print statement, so system dot out dot println, and then we can put array 1 since it has values in it right now, and then instead of putting a particular index, we'll put the I that we have right here, the variable I that we made. And then what's gonna happen is so we have I equal to 0, and we know our first index, like our first element of the array is always index 0. And then we want this loop to keep running while I is less than array.length. So array.length is how many elements are in the array. That's what this length, and this is not a method. Let me write a note about this. So dot length in arrays is not a method. It is a variable in the class. So that's why it's different from the dot length open bracket close. I mean open parenthesis close parenthesis, because this is a method, while this is a variable in the array. So we're doing I is less than the array dot length, not equal to, less than only, because if it reaches array dot length, that is like there's no index for that, because the index is always 1 less since we start at 0. So you could do I is less than array dot length, or you can do I is less than or equal to array dot length minus 1. It's the same thing since we're dealing with ints here. So you could do this or this. So let me do. And we have array.length because this is we're looking at this array. If we were looking at this array, we'd have array 1. If we were looking at this array, we'd have string array. It just matters whatever array.length, because you want to know what's the length of the particular array that you're doing. And then in the end we have I++. And the only reason we're doing this is because we want it to go to the next index every time. And for loops can have different things. So like you could have a float, you could have an object, you could have initialize, and then you could have a different command being executed at the end instead of I++. But this is what we do for arrays. So we can show now, if we run this, it should print out all the elements of array. Oh, okay, we're doing array 1. So we just need to change this right here. For array 1. And yeah, I printed out 1, 2, 3. And those are the elements that we have right here. We can do 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. We can do however elements we want, and it will still work because this code will work for any size array, because that's why we're using abstraction here by doing array1.length, because we could have counted the length and done like the exact value. Like we know, for example, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So we could have done, for example, less than 10. We could have done that, and starts at 0, I less than 10, add 1 to I. It would work. But the thing is, if we add one element to this array, what happens is it's not going to print all the elements. And if we take one element out, we're going to hit an error, out of bounds error. So this works, but the thing is, it doesn't have abstraction, so it only works for a specific array, which is why programmers almost never do that. That's why you should always do the array.length. And there's many things you can do with for loops. Another thing you can do. So for now, let's keep this in mind. This is what we want inside our for loop for going through all elements in an array. So now another thing that you might want to do is, let's say you want to go through like the reverse of the array. So let's say you want to go through the last character, like you want to go through the last element to the first element. So if you want to go reverse, the thing that you would do is you would start with I equals array dot length -1, and then that means the first, like, you're gonna be at the last element in the beginning, and then what you want to get, statement you're gonna want to put in the middle is while it's greater than or equal to 0, because if it gets to a negative, there's no negative indexes, like indices. There's the lowest index is a 0. So you can do this, or you can do I is greater than -1. Both of them work. So let's do this. Let me add something. Alright, I'll do it later. So and then the last things to do, I equals I -1. So you can do it either this way. So let me show y'all. Let me copy this, because so you can do it like this, or the shortcut is just I minus minus, just like the I plus plus, I minus minus. And with this, it should print out everything from the end to the beginning instead of from the beginning to the end. So let's see. Oh, something's wrong. Okay, I messed up the array. I had array this one instead of array 1. Alright, we just need to put this, and it should work now. And you see, we go from 10 to 1. And this will work for any array at any time. And the thing I wanted to tell you about this, like this right here, you could do let me write it after this. So this is what we use for going all the elements from the end to the start. So you can call this the reverse. And what I wanted to say about this, you can use either this, so you can use I is greater than -1, or you can use I is greater than or equal to 0. Both of them work. Because this one, once it gets to -1, because you're going to get to 0 the last element, or like the first element, but since you're going reverse, it's the last element you're going to be going through. And then once you subtract from 0, that's not going to be equal to greater than or equal to 0. And then it's not going to be equal to greater than -1, because it's going to be -1. So either or will work. But I usually like to do greater than or equal to 0. It just helps me visualize the code better. So this is what I recommend, but both works. And the nice thing about for loops is not only can they do these things to like arrays, you can do the same thing to strings. So let's make a new string. So let's say we want to have string str2 equals, let's say, hello world. And never forget the semicolon. So what we could do to go through the same way we went through these arrays, we can go through the string character by character by using its built-in methods. So like we said, the first character in a string is always 0, just like the first element in an array is always the 0, or like has an index of 0. So we always have I equals 0, and then I is greater than or less than, since we're going now from beginning to end for the string, we're gonna do I is less than, and then for string we do str2 dot length, and there is a like parentheses because this is a method. Like I said before, this is a method, while the array dot length is a variable in the class. So always remember, for a string you do the parentheses in the end, and for an array you don't. And then of course I++. So this should print out all the characters once we fix the print statement. So since we learned about the character at method in the strings, so we can do str2 dot character at, and then we will do I, of course. So now for every I, so we start at 0, we go through the first cycle, prints str character at I, and if it's 0, then that's going to be this H. Then the next cycle adds 1, and then it's going to be this O, adds 1, L, L, O, space, W, O, R, L, D, exclamation, and then the exclamation is going to be the I, like it's going to be the length minus 1. And then once it adds again, it's going to be equal to the length. And since that's not less than, since I will not be less than length, string dot length, that's why this loop's going to end. It's not going to run anymore. And we will like not get any errors. So we can run this right now and see what happens. Oh, I'm stuck right here. Alright, we can run it now. Alright, so we got it since we used println. Remember from the last lesson? Since we used println, each one is on a different line, but let's say we did print. We should get, we will get the same thing. But like that would be redundant. Why would you want to do that? You could just print out the string itself. But this is nice if you know like a particular section that you want to do, or like let's say you do not want to print, you want to do something to each character in the string. You can do that to it. So let's write this down so y'all would have it. So this is the for loop that you do for the for going through all characters in a string. And Let's do the reverse just so we would stay consistent. And then I is greater than or equal to 0, and then I minus minus, and let's do println again. And we can run this to see. Oh, I messed up something. Oh, okay. It's a -1. Simple mistakes can cause errors. Alright. And you can see here we have this in reverse. We went from the last character to the first character. And let me write this down in the notes so y'all can keep up with that. Let me write normal. And then so then with this said, these are just like simple things that these for loops can be used for. There's so many more things that you will learn in the future that these for loops can be used, but for now, these are some good ways you can use these for loops. And the last thing I wanted to go through is the for this video is the for each loop. So the for each loop is an enhanced for loop, which is just an easier way of doing a for loop for example, arrays. And how you do this one, the format for it is you put strings. Let's say you have you're looking at this array of array 1, and it's an int. So we can do for each, and then you put int, and we can call it I, and then you put this colon, and then you put the array that you want to go through. So let's put array 1. So this will go through each element in array 1. So we can do system dot out dot println and let's say we want to do we want to print out I. So we can, okay, let me get rid of this for now. Or by the way, another way to comment stuff out is this way. You do this, you do a / star and then star / okay. Anyways, so for this it should print out every element inside of array 1. Alright. So yeah, it prints out every element. So this is the use, like this for each loop is just a easier way of just going through each element in an array, or other like things that we're gonna learn about in the future. I do not think it works for strings. I mean, yeah, it does not. I don't think it works for strings. We can try though. Yeah, it doesn't work for strings. So this can only work with arrays. So let me write this down. Cannot work with primitives, or cannot work with strings. Easy way. Because in the for each loop, you don't have to like keep up with the logic or anything. You just say for each, and then you say what type of array it is. So this is a string array. I mean int array. and then you put the colon, then you say in the array name. So then I becomes the element, each element of the array. But it's also not as dynamic, so it can't like you can't mess with it as much as the for loop, because this is gonna go through each element no matter what. Anyways, guys, that sums it up for the video. I'll see y'all in the next one. If you like the content, don't forget to like and subscribe.